The reason it's so important to take this idea that who you are starts right now is because it means that instead of being the victim of fear, you turn and have a relationship to fear. Instead of believing what your mind tells you about the fear, you discover who you are in relationship to the fear right now. It's what I express in the book, The Mandala of Being, that in the present moment, when we lose connection to ourselves, there's only 4 places we can go. The mind goes into the past, and so if we're experiencing fear, the mind will say, I'm in fear because of, or this fear is like what I felt before. The mind then goes into the future, which can make the fear worse because you can tell yourself, oh, this is going to continue to happen. Or you can try to diminish the fear by telling yourself a story that makes you feel hopeful. But it's actually not staying present. You're not actually in the vividness of the present moment. Or the mind is taking us into beliefs about ourselves, stories about ourselves, judgments about ourselves, things we tell ourselves we should be or shouldn't be, things we believe that are essential before we're going to feel good about life or feel good about ourselves. And it takes us in the opposite direction into these judgments about other people. So if you just visualize a circle, and in the center of the circle is this moment, the present moment where we're always living, and then you realize that there's only 4 directions your mind can take you. And the further it takes you away from the present moment, the more you're going to be vulnerable to fear and to guilt and to anger and to jealousy and to depressiveness and grandiosity, all the things that really poison us, all happen when we lose that grounding in the present moment. And so you just visualize this circle. This is the moment at the center. It's like a clock, except at the center is the word now, this moment, who you really are in this moment. And then the mind can take you into stories about yourself. It can take you into stories about others, about the past or about the future. And the further you go in any of those directions, the more you lose contact with you. You lose that sense of delicious flow in the moment. You lose the sense of the regenerative aliveness that makes you feel once again that you are good and rightful in your own being and that life is a gift. You lose the sense of gratitude. And so it becomes really important and very empowering to say, who I am begins right now, and then realize, oh, now I'm telling myself a me story. Oh, now I'm telling myself a you story, and it's making me angry, making me jealous. Or the me story is making me depressed or making me self-important. Or now I'm in the past, and the past is making me feel regret or nostalgia. Or now I'm in the future, and I'm worrying myself that something won't happen the way I want it to, or something will happen in a way I don't want it to. And you just begin to carry a compass with you, a compass that says, there's only 4 ways I leave the now. There's only 4 ways I disconnect from trust and gratitude and compassion and forgiveness. And it's when my mind leaves into stories about myself, others, the past, and the future. With either Deb or Amanda, if either of them had identified with the past and who they had been, then all they could have felt was regret and resentment and bitterness. And if they imagined the future from that place of who they used to be, then the future was just misery and darkness and despair. As soon as they move into the present moment, everything is starting completely new. They look at themselves, and it's not a story about being a disabled person. It's a story about being a conscious individual living with a disability. They look at their bodies, and instead of calling it a disabled body, it becomes simply the reality of who they are in this moment, neither good nor bad, just the doorway into the fullness of their experience. If you take people who are in a marital crisis or a divorce, you lose yourself in the judgments about the other. You give so much power perhaps to the other person. He is unfaithful, or she is too controlling, or she has too much. And you don't actually stop and realize that all you're doing is poisoning yourself with those kinds of beliefs. In fact, the divorce started years before with the beginning of believing the judgments you had about your partner. And when you do that, you lose connection to yourself. And at the same time, if you give them so much power over whether you're happy, you're going to be telling yourself that you're not lovable, that you're not attractive enough, that now that you're getting older, you won't be of interest to men. And then you'll see a future in which things could be very dark, or a future in which you'll be lonely. And suddenly the present moment is poisoned by what you're telling yourself, not by the actuality of what you're really experiencing, which you don't know. It's like life is technicolor, it's vivid, it's wonderful in the moment. And then the mind moves into a story about someone else, and life becomes full of anger and resentment and bitterness. Or the mind moves into a story about yourself, and you start to get depressed, or you start to get self-important. And so it's as if the color is seeped out of life, the vividness is seeped out of life because of the way our minds leave the present. And there isn't going to be any easy way past fear, except if you recognize that fear gives you a chance, by turning in the present moment and meeting it, to become stronger and stronger in your mind, stronger in your ability to stay here, stronger in your ability not to be hijacked by judgments about your husband that become, or wife, that become the basis of this horrible, arguing, bitter divorce. Not to be hijacked by the past that makes you feel guilty or nostalgic or regretful. Not to be hijacked by the future, which makes you afraid and anxious and worried, or full of false hope, where you're actually imagining a story that makes the present feel good, but you're not in the present at all. It's a story about an imaginary future. So these are just examples of what we do all the time, and fear will absolutely possess us if we don't have ourselves really rooted right now in our ability to be present with whatever life is about. The mandala is just a practical way of living meditatively. It's a tool for insight. It shows you when you're not here and where you've gone. And the interesting thing is that when we're here, we're just a deep, spacious awareness. We're a very awake, vivid mind. But there's not a person that we call me. We start to become me when we get disconnected from this place inside of ourselves. So what it's bringing us back to is our original being, our original nature. And it's just showing us how to do that moment by moment. Of course, each time you come back to the present, you gain energy. So at the end of a day, you're less fatigued, you've been less worn down by anger and regret and guilt and distrust. At the end of the day, you just have a natural readiness for rest. Your body surrenders to sleep. You have a vitality that is pretty much inexhaustible. And so you're gaining energy by learning to come back and start over. Oh, I'm in the me story. I'm going to start over right now. Oh, now I'm in stories about others. I'm going to start over right now. That's how it operates as a compass. The word mandala means circle. It's an old Sanskrit word. There are also drawings, sacred drawings, that are representations of the self. So mandala is a circle strongly oriented toward the center with 4 basic directions. And so this mandala is a tool for insight that says who you are, your real life is always lived in this moment. And if you leave this moment, you can be in the past, the future, in stories about yourself, stories about others. And that if you bring yourself back here and start your life anew, you have limitless energy. Limitless energy. You're restored and are renewed. And you live it. It is really coming back to the place of real intelligence and heartfulness.